Welcome to Coaching in Session,
where limits end and growth begins.
Hosted by Michael Rearden.
This is your space to challenge the ordinary,
unlock your potential,
and step boldly into your next chapter.
Your mindset journey continues.
Welcome, Dr. Tommy Rhee to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for coming on. Today, we're going to be talking about your work. You are a doctor. You are a sports chiropractic, or you do chiropractic care in sports, but that's your specialty, where you are a physician and you're helping people with their back. You're helping people with any type of ailments they're having. And this can range from all of the things, because you have a long list of things you have done in your life. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But it's important to have people understand. I think this is going to be one of our main points today, where if there's something wrong in your life right now, there is going to be a way where you can regenerate, where you can heal. I can't tell you how many people they get stuck in an ailment. They say that this is just who I am. This is just my life now. And they don't do much. Right. So they stay stuck. They don't get the therapy. They don't get the care that they need. And for them, at that point, it just becomes a ticking time bomb to things start to fall apart. And I just find it astounding how sometimes you can get a 60-year-old who is like literally looking like they're 30, and then a 60-year-old that looks like they're 80. You're just like, what happened, right? And it's going to be leading to the mindset, it's going to be leading to the type of care that they're getting, and then also the information that they're receiving. Because if they have two doctors telling them two different things, one saying that you're always going to be this way, and one saying that you're going to get better, the person you believe is going to be the solution, or it's going to be the action that they were saying that you can have, right? That life you can have. So this is a mindset. This is a, neural pathway type of conversation we're going to have today. But before we do all that, can you give us an introduction of who you are, to give a bit of synopsis of all the things that you have dabbled in over the years, so people can get a clear reflection of exactly like your skill set, your skill level, and how you've helped so many people before.
All right. Thank you. Well, my name is Dr. Tommy Rhee. I guess it all starts for me, of course, as a kid playing sports and understanding that I love sports. I love physical activity and I love that world. But I know I wasn't going to be a professional athlete because I'm not tall. I'm not going to be that big. So, my dad was a physician. Uncles, aunts, everybody's a physician in the medical world. So I knew that was my path, but I want to integrate the sports. So I knew that was my path. Put those two together, sports and medicine, taking care of people and getting that relationship. Well, one of the big stepping stones that I had was the military. Went to the Navy, flew jets, had a great time, and really learned how to tune in myself and not be that rebellious kid. So came out of there, went on to my world, which is a sports chiropractic world. And I was fortunate enough where I started my career at UCLA, working with those athletes. And we're not talking about just like the everyday kind of weekend warrior kind of college kids. We're talking about the elite collegiate athletes. And that was from basketball to football to track and field. And you're experiencing that caliber of athletes. Then when these kids go on to the professional or to the Olympic level stuff, now you're going along with them. And then that's where you start understanding about how to get the best performance. And one of the key ingredients is the recovery. The real interesting situation there is that how does the cell get back to its normal function after you break it down from a workout, break it down from an injury, or just get some kind of trauma? So they have to return back as quick as possible. Well, that's how regenerative medicine got into my world. Once I saw that, I started seeing how these athletes, these professional athletes, get involved with things like equipment, right? Lasers, maybe a shock wave. Then you start hearing about these things called like injectable, like prolotherapy, PRP. Now it's becoming stem cell therapy. And then you're hearing these words right now, peptides. You're hearing these things like, like all these kind of information and signals you want to give to your body to regenerate. So as we're developing into this world of regenerative medicine, the key common thing that you hear about are injectables, needles. So my athletes, they wouldn't do these kind of stem cell therapy during the season because there's a downtime. So as I'm working with these professional athletes, they're talking about, I can't do it during the season because the downtime, it interrupts my gameplay or my practice. So I can't do that. So they go into the world of pain management. With pain management, you're doing things that mask the injury. You're trying to mask the pain, right? So you're not going to the source. And that's why you hear about this off-season surgery, off-season corrective care, and that's where they really take care of themselves is off-season. So there is a gap there. There's something that needs to be done during a season, but the problem is that injectables do damage, right? You got your primary injury site, and when you put a syringe or a needle in there, you're going to create a secondary injury site. So that's why the problem exists during that time. So then you start understanding about these athletes and what they're trying to do. They're trying to regenerate and come back to normal. So you think about what's really going on with the mechanism. And when you understand about the mechanism of the stem cell therapy, it's not the cells, it's the signals. Now you know it's a smaller molecule. Now you're thinking about a different delivery system, not injectable, topical. And then I developed a topical stem cell that gives you the same impact as a needle without that downtime. So that's where this world is evolving. That's how I got involved with this whole regenerative medicine and topical world. So as you can see, it started off way back when I was a kid, and now here I am trying to deliver this signal to your own body to regenerate, heal fast. So then when these professional athletes can heal faster, now you take your everyday weekend person with arthritis or repetitive injury, and it does its same type of repair mechanism. So that's what I'm excited about.
Perfect. And I just wanted to get into this aspect of recovery and pain management. I think this is going to be a big talking point for us today because we focus a lot on mindset here. And I love to do or to tell stories. And I remember a time, and I tell the story quite a bit, where I was training for some marathons, some 5Ks, nothing too crazy, right? And I had pulled like a hamstring, and I said, oh, whatever. I'm young. I was in my 20s. I was like, I'm still going to do my 5Ks, right? And that was a mistake, right? Because after the 5Ks, I developed sciatica from just pushing through that injury. Yeah, sure, I managed the pain well when I was running and everything, but then the pain that was after that was like, I was like, man, this is ridiculous. I'm popping a leaf like they're Tic Tacs, and and basically I came to the conclusion of like, this is just going to be my life, right? Like, there's nothing that's going to fix this. I'm just going to be miserable for the rest of my life, and I'm in my early 20s, and I'm just thinking, this can't be life. Right. And I remember going to chiropractor, to doctor, to trying to figure out the solution. Right. Like, because I was done managing the pain. I wanted to figure out what was going to be the remedy. Right. What was going to be the cure for me. I tried many different things, and just doing stretches like Bikram, yoga, things like that, that was able to relieve all of the sciatica issues that I was having. And I know there's going to be a different conversation when we're talking about recovery and pain management in sports, or even in the everyday Joe type of person, where they might be recovering from something, where they broke a leg, or they have a sciatica problem, or maybe they pulled a hamstring. Like, something could have happened in their life and they have to recover from it. Now, everyday people are very different in the mindsets than of sports athletes, right? Sports athletes, they're gun-ho. I need to recover. I'm going to recover. Maybe they don't want to recover because they want to be in the game, etc. Versus a person who's in recovery, just a regular Joe. Poor me, I'm injured. All right, well, it will never be the same. So why even bother? And so a regular person would be more prone to manage the pain than a person who is trained, or a trained athlete would be. I need to recover in my off season, right? Like, this is when they do it. They recover in their off season, or they figure out ways to recover from game to game, or from meet to meet. Now, my question to you is, what is the difference between the recovery aspect or the recovery mindset and the pain management mindset?
That's a good, interesting point right there. There's like that two worlds, right? But in essence, believe it or not, those two worlds have their own subsection of worlds. So when you look at an athlete, there are the athletes that are gifted, and then you see and you hear about their workout. They're minimal. They don't really like push themselves, but when it's game time, they can perform at a high level. But those are the athletes that you're prone to injuries. Now you have a person that doesn't have the talent, but they train hard. They train hard and they understand about their body and they know how to recover quick. They get involved with all the latest modalities, the therapies, the stem cells, and they can get back to normal quicker. They have a longer career. Now you take that to the civilian people like myself, and then you've got those two groups too. Some people, believe it or not, in the mindset, they associate the physical activity of a mental therapy session. Now, those are the kind of people that are just like professional athletes that want to continue their activity because that goes hand in hand with their Zen, their meditation, their type of like their mental state. So when they get injured, you're talking about the same kind of like mental state as an athlete that needs to get back on the field because their performance is equated to a dollar bill. So they need to get back. So then when you have this person that thinks that I don't have my meditation, like my 5K run, I don't get that runner's high sitting around with this injury. So they start doing that panicking and what do I need to do? Let me throw everything in the kitchen sink to it. And then you start understanding that these guys are pushing themselves to the world of overtraining, overtaxing themselves. And then the recovery becomes a poor mechanism of creating that what they call it, scar tissue formation, poor biomechanics, just to continue that activity. But now you're not giving that tissue an ability to recover, to heal correctly. So there's there's those two worlds that kind of blend together. So there's that two groups. So when I hear about these guys that need that type of like that reinsurance that, yeah, you can get back, you're going to be fine. You've got to be on their side. It's the biggest thing. It's definitely a mental side of everything that has to do with human performance, human activity, or just everyday activity. You're going to have to get the mind understanding what the body needs to go through, and then add anything you can to speed up that process and work as a team. Because that's what athletes want. They just want to have that confidence that I'm going to be back 100%. And then if it's a time situation, give them a time. Give them a time. Give me 10 days. Give me 12 days, depending on the severity. And then you talk to someone else that has a weekend warrior mentality or just a daily activity, and they need that 5,000 step walk, but they can't because they sprained their ankle. You got to give them a game plan. You got to say, we're going to be here at this stage, here at this stage. And so they can see that future down the line. So yeah, those two kind of blend together as far as the athlete and the everyday person.
I like this idea of they need to get a game plan going on. Now, with this game plan, sometimes there can be a heavy burden on time constraint. Maybe someone is going on a vacation, they have a big game, and they don't want to miss it. Think of Kobe Bryant when I think he had hurt his ankle or something, where he couldn't play in the game, and you could just see him on the sidelines like, I want to be in this game. But he knew he couldn't, right? And he knew if he pushed himself, like it's like, oh, like I'm just going to push myself, like I don't really care. Yeah, sure, he could have played maybe in that game. Maybe he wouldn't have been at his peak performance, and maybe something inside of him might have said, like, that Black Mamba mentality is like, I don't care if I'm hurt, I'm still going to play. Now we look at the longevity of him going all the way to retirement. If he didn't listen to doctors, if he didn't listen to like their sports care, their coaches, he wouldn't have made it that far, right? Along the way, they would have broke down. And there's so many athletes today that do have coaches that do get, good care. Like LeBron James, he spends a lot of money on his care, on his mindset, because he knows if he doesn't have it, somewhere along the line, there's going to be a hiccup, there's going to be a fracture, and he's going to break down. And oftentimes that is where it begins, where there's a small little fracture and it becomes a big thing, whether it be in an athlete's life or in the regular civilian person's life, where there's something small that adds up to something bigger. When someone is dealing with something small, should they focus on recovery? Should they focus on just stopping and just waiting? Or should they, maybe, push through because it could be helpful to them?
I think the biggest thing is experience. As you seem like you play sports when you're younger. So we went through a lot of injuries, sprained ankles, low back pain. We've been through it all. And we've felt that kind of world of pain, the recovery, and then the rehab and getting back to normal. So we know the mechanism. Some people have never experienced that in adult, so when they do get that injury, they're pretty much scared. They're shocked. They said, am I done? I can never walk again. So they don't have that experience to relate to. Those kind of people, you need to find someone like me, a sports guy that really can talk you through this whole portion of the anatomy, the physiology. What happened to your body? Why are you in this kind of the restricted movement and the pain? And then you can get educated that way. And then you understand, all right, I understand that this is only temporary. I can start doing some process into the therapy and then get myself back to normal. You need someone to coach you along to this process. So it's very important, just like a professional athlete, they have a group around them, a little team, right? You've got someone like me there. Then you have like a nutritionist. Then you have like a mental coach. You have everybody that supports him. Well, just like an everyday person, you need that. You need a guy that understands about you as a person. Then you have to get someone like me that understands the body and the mechanisms and how to get you to normal as far as I get injured and get back. And then you have other players in there. Get that team around you, and then you can do your best out at performance in any kind of aspect of the physical or mental side of things. So that's what's important. And I feel that educating and getting yourself around people.
Yeah, I love the aspect of how certain people are not going to have that experience of maybe being in sports when they're younger. I can't tell you how many times I had to run the lines, like in basketball, where the coach would make us run. We had to do it in 30 seconds, right? And if you didn't do it in 30 seconds, you had to do it again. But here's the caveat. The whole team has to do it within 30 seconds. So you have one person who's just not having it today. And they're just like 31 seconds, 32 seconds. And you're just looking at this person like, come on, man, I'm doing it in 25 seconds. And this person has been someone who has been able historically to do it, where today was just maybe a bad day. Maybe it's a mental block. Maybe there's a physical block. Maybe there was something going on. But it was an eye-opening experience for the people on the team to look at just the one person that is essentially keeping them running. You're just like looking at them as like, what are you doing? Like, you just have to push yourself to this point so we can stop running. We just want to stop running, right? So, yeah. But you're young, right? So you're not looking at it in the aspect of, who are they? How are they feeling? Do they have any problems, right? Because it's easy in our world to say, oh, look at that person doing great things. Well, this person's 65. They're able to go to the gym. They look fantastic. Look at me, right? So it's like they have a different dynamic. And we have a stereotype, especially here in America, of how people should look or how they should, represent themselves. We can look at our sports players, our athletes, and how they're making all of this money. And then we can look at like the dynamic, like, why do they make all this money? And, versus, a doctor, for example, who's keeping them in the game, right? It's this aspect of now what separates an athlete from the regular Joe? Like, is there that mindset? Is it the gift aspect? Is it that talent aspect? Or is it just someone that says, I want this?
I think it starts off with the talent. You get a kid that excels at junior high, the high school, and they're just doing fantastic, but they don't put any effort. Then when they get to college, things get separated real fast. So everybody has talent there, but now you're looking for that extra work from that talented person that kind of pops them out, right? So now they're a third string because they have the talent to get on the team, but now you have to do the effort to become the first string. And then when you push yourself even more, then you're looking for all conference, then all collegiate or Division One. What do they call those things now? Team One, All Americans. Oh, geez, All Americans, right? So you become that type of. So it's through that conditioning of seeing yourself work out and getting results, and that builds that character inside these guys. Now, when it comes to like everyday person, you challenge yourself with these 5K runs, these local things, or maybe a basketball game, or you're working out and you want to bench press a certain weight. So you work up to that. So you have your mini little games in you that you say, all right, I want to challenge myself between my old numbers to my new numbers that I'm trying to achieve. So, it's just a little sample of what athletes do. But the interesting thing about athletes in the professional world, you have those two groups. You have the talented athletes that can even get them all the way to the NFL. But the thing is that it's what happens with adversity. When you see them get injured or something happens, that's where it quickly divides. It separates right there. When you start seeing the guys that have the strong mental sense and the projection of they can overcome anything, their recovery is real fast. When you have those guys that sit back and say, why me? How come this happened to me now? I was never injured in high school or college, and now in the NFL, I'm injured. I feel sorry for myself. You're going to see the progression go real slow. Rehab takes not the typical 3 to 6 months. It's going to a year, maybe it questions me 2 years, and then they're looking for excuses. And it's just like that in every genre of the world, right? You're looking at kids, high school, collegiate, professional. They're all the same. It's the mindset, and the ones that can really focus on their objective and knowing that you have to overcome things. It's a hard task, and it comes to through conditioning. You just can't just be that person overnight. It comes to like a little process. It starts off the small step, and you build your confidence by accomplishing things. It's like everything out there. It's about listening to good, positive information, being optimistic, and not surrounding yourself with negative people. It's a classic across the board with that sports and the general public.
And would you say that, there's a little pun here, that this type of thinking is the future of medicine or of regenerative medicine?
Oh, absolutely. If your mind is not in it, when I have a patient that comes in here and they don't have the confidence in me, I'll be honest with them. I said, I don't think this is your place because I know exactly the outcome. You're not going to like it because you already set your mind to like, it's not going to work. You have to get them to believe in what you can do and what you have and the information. So I do as much education at the very beginning as possible. So when I talk about, like, let's say they have a patella tendonitis, and then we talk about the anatomy of the knee, the patella and the tendon itself. Then we talk about why is it recovering slow? Why doesn't it heal fast like a muscle? Then we go into the different parts of it, right? A tendon is not a vascular tissue. There's not many blood flow versus the muscle. A lot of blood flow. It contracts. It has a lot of like mechanism to get that blood flow in there to, if it does get injured, it can recover quickly because you have a lot of information and blood that can give you that type of tissue to heal, whereas a tendon doesn't. So that's why it heals slow. So I talk to them about that. When you do that to an athlete or everyday person, they will get on your side. Goes, okay, you educated me. I understand. Now, how do we heal it? Then we talk about the different type of modalities, different therapies. And then I just say, which one do you want? This is the slow route. This is the fast route. Which route do you want? Give them the decision. If they say fast route, here we go. Let's do everything, advanced equipments. Let's do the stem cell therapy. Let's do everything to get you healing fast as possible. And that's what I do. Educating the person gives them the best opportunity to be on your side. And then when they're on your side, you work as a team. Now you're trying to go for the same goal, get them back to functioning and being active again.
I love the aspect of you're trying to get them on the same team, because it is not you so much that are, healing them, like you're giving them the energy. It's their body, it's their mindset. And I know many people who, like, they break their leg, for example, and they just stay bedridden. They don't want to do the therapy. They say, I'll do it in 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks or 6 more weeks, right? And it just kind of keeps on going and it keeps on recurring. And then eventually when they're able to hobble along with a cane or a walker or whatever, they say, okay, well, this is it, right? I could walk, even though it's not back to where I was. They're okay with that limitation, right? Because it's better than being in bed before. So they don't look at the longevity of what their life is left, because I don't think people think of the quality of life from dealing with like a broken leg that you haven't done the work and getting any type of therapy or any type of medicines, where it's just like, my leg is always going to be stiff, it's always going to be tight, it's always going to drag a little bit more than the other leg. And so this is to say that a lot of people, they will give up too soon. And I know sometimes doctors can get a bad rap because they are not always the team player like you are. They are like, well, doom and gloom, you'll never walk again. You're lucky if you could walk or hobble along with a cane, right? So they're, like, a lot of people have a disdain for doctors now because it feels as if they're just telling me what's wrong with me and they're not helping me get better. And this aspect of being a team player and trying to work with them is a newfound way to, like, help people say, hey, I'm not in this by myself.
Yeah, it's sad to say, but there are providers, doctors like that. That's the tough thing. As a patient that's injured and you have a doctor, he's on his his sign or his website, it says sports med or specialize in this, and you go there and it doesn't feel right. You've got to get that initial feeling that you have and stay tuned to it. If it doesn't make sense, question it. If a patient comes to me and questions my therapy or anatomy or their diagnosis, we talk about it. I'm not going to discredit them. I'll say, oh, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm going to listen to everything you're saying because I don't feel what you feel. That's the best thing about relationship. It's got to be two-way communication. So if you come across a doctor that's not on your side, he seems like he's closed-minded, there are other doctors out there. There are other doctors will give you facts. Now there's the other side of that coin where he's like too positive and he says, "Oh yeah, you have a neck injury and you're a paraplegic. I'll get you to walk." You got to know your limitations too, right? So you want to make sure it's factually understood that you guys are on the same page and he has the information that you can challenge him and then he can provide that information that's going to be correct. But if it's incorrect, he's pulling things out of his butt, then you got to start looking at, hey, this is not the right guy either. So just make sure that it doesn't hurt. It doesn't bother me if you come up to me, you challenge me for my diagnosis or my treatment or the anatomy. And I like it because let's go, let's talk about it. And we'll just go into a little fun conversation, which I love because at the end of the conversation, they more than likely are going to say, okay, you know what you're doing. Let's continue on. But if a doctor doesn't do that, then you have to start asking yourself, well, why can't he answer these simple questions about anatomy, physiology, about diagnosing, or what's going on here? So there's your other red flag too.
I hinted at this, but I really wanted to bring it into full perspective to all the listeners. You have a book, The Future of Regenerative Medicine, and I want to get from you this idea of where is medicine going right now? Because we can see on infomercials and commercials and maybe doctor's office visits on post boards and poster boards of where medicine is going. And we have made some tremendous advancements in medicine over the years, as we can, see. But there's always a plateau at some point, and then there's someone who breaks through that plateau. They said that there's something beyond this because people might have said, oh, you break your leg, you get it popped in, you get back in a cast. Who's to say? This is all hypothetically speaking, right? It's just the idea of future, right? Maybe one day there's a machine. You can put your leg in a machine and it does everything it has to do, where it can get your leg back in alignment and it can give you all the things your leg needs to recover at a quicker rate versus being in a cast for 6 weeks. So the future of medicine is always going to be, I think, evolving. There's no limit per se, but then again, technology can limit us, but the future of medicine your way or in your mind, where do you see it going in the next 10 years?
You're going to see some awesome information that's going to come out here soon about activating your own cells to do normal function. The problem is that if you were 20, 30, you got injured, it's like, a couple of days later, you're back to normal. Just like when you go out and, when you're a kid and you go out drink and you get the hangover, it doesn't last as long as if I did it in my 50s and do it, right? Because we don't have the 100% cell activation. So the future of medicine is not so much like forcing the body with some type of surgical procedure or a joint replacement. It's turning your own existing tissue on to do preventative stuff, to make the cells all communicate correctly and be 100% active. As we get older, our signals decrease because we may have a disturbance like inflammation that's kind of like slowing the signals to your existing tissue to do its job. We always want to have that cell do its lifespan, and then when it goes away, they go apoptosis, you replace it with another cell. You want that 1-to-1 ratio to continue on, but when the signal decreases, well, there's no information telling your existing tissue to make more cells. So that's why we go through the aging process. Now, if you can solve that problem with the signal, increase the signal, just like you hear about people taking testosterone or some type of peptides. Well, it's a signal. It's a signal telling your body to continue on, do your job. Now, the future medicine is not so much about, after the fact. It's going to be preventative. It's going to say, all right, stay healthy, continue on. Now that will get you that longevity, the active lifespan. You're going to see aging exceeding 100 years old. not just 100 just living, but 100 actively living, like going for a nice walk and being that person that you can do activity. Because there's nothing better than doing a good walk, but still being able to like remember the days 100 years ago when we did that, and I'm still going strong. So that's where the future is going. And it's all about the signal to activate your tissue to continue on its proper function. Because the cells don't really die out, it sits dormant. And that's what's a fun part of this whole medicine is you're starting to hear more about this stuff. You're hearing about a lot of cutting edge stuff that are really involved with signaling. And then we are in that evolution of moving from all that surgical procedures, the chemistry and those kind of artificial stuff to more natural way of signaling your own body to continue on to its normal function.
First time I'm hearing about the signal, right? And it makes perfect sense because if a signal is getting weaker, I could think of it in a common way where people can have a Wi-Fi router. And if the signal is weak in one area, you get a boost, like a booster in
There you
another
go.
area. So it's like we do this in our day-to-day life in our homes, but yet when we do it to our body, we basically just say, this is just my old age speaking for me now. And rightfully so. Yes, the body does change and it does need, different remedies and it needs you to do different things. But this is all to say that if you're taking care of yourself, you know what needs to happen. It's just very similar to owning a home. You own a home, every 15 to 30 years, you're going to have to change your roof, right? Like the roof just has to be changed. Now you can wait until there's leaks in the roof and you're like, oh, I got to change the roof now. Or you can say, like the shingles are peeling off, they're discolored. And you can say, I can see the signs. I know I have to do something. But yet people, they wait for that flood. They wait for the big problems in life. And then they say, let me take action. And I know that can be just, people just afraid to admit. And I just think of like this aspect of staying healthy where people can either be educated on staying healthy and they know what needs to get done, or maybe they possibly incorporate a lifestyle to staying healthy. So they are eating well, they're going to the gym, they're remaining active, versus in America, especially, we have a very sedate life where people, they go to work, they're in a cubicle, they're sitting down most of the time. They come home, they sit down most of the time. They're watching Netflix or watching, YouTube on their phones. So they're not moving a lot. And it goes away from where our ancestors were, where they were hunters and gatherers and they were moving and they were doing all of these different things. And yet we have a very different life. And then our foods are, so high processed where it's like we have all of this, abundance in our world today. Yet it's like people are just doing the things that are just expediting their bad health. And so if we had to look at something, would you say that people need better information, better education, or they just need to adapt a better lifestyle if they want better health for their body, their mind, and the longevity of their life?
Yeah, well, education is very important. Educating yourself about your body, understanding what is going on. People think that, our body is just a simple machine, but you got to remember it's a machine. So you have to put the right information. That's the actual, like the, information of a positive thought or information of food and what kind of food, the non-processed food, the whole food. And then understanding about the exercise component. Why is exercise important? Why is cardiovascular system important? Because our body is a big machine. And just like how you have to change your oil in your car every so many miles and make sure that you do all the special type of like service, same thing with our body. Think about that side of it. Now, as we get older and more advanced in our technology, information is getting better and better out there. There are things out there that like Chat GPT and all these AI things. You can put in what you feel and then what's my chance of living to 100 years old, and they'll give you an idea. You take that idea and then you talk to a dietitian or someone like me or someone like another doctor you trust and talk to them. Is this achievable? It goes, absolutely. If they said no way, it goes, that's not your doctor. You have to go find a good person that can support your needs and make a plan and go for that action. So when someone says, I want to live to 100 years old, goes, okay, get rid of the alcohol, get rid of the cigarettes. Let's try it and do our best kind of like incubator in our body to grow that person to that 100 years.
Yeah, very true. I love the idea of just the support aspect because we develop in a support system, or most of us do, right? Of course, there's going to be individuals who do not have that privilege and they don't have a good support system. But many, kids growing up today, they will have maybe a mom or dad or, grandma or grandpa, someone along the lines that can support them. And sometimes the best households where there could be a mother and father, there's so much support where they don't necessarily know that they're doing harm to that child. Oh, you want a hot dog? Here you go. You want McDonald's? Okay, we'll get you a Happy Meal today. And it's like they do these things not knowing the detriments to it long term. And it's so funny because growing up, McDonald's was a big thing, right? In the 90s and like in the 80s and 90s. And I remember we were so adamant about going to McDonald's, like my siblings and I, because that's when they had like the playscape. So you can go into there and play and jump in the ball pit and go down the slides. And so we were loving that. And I remember we would just get food there, the chicken nuggets, and hamburgers, French fries, apple pies, and things along those lines. And I remember, fast forward from that, experience in high school, my first year. And this is like when I didn't do sports because I was just like, I'm just focusing on academics. And I did really well in academics, but I ate a lot of crappy food. And I remember I got like fat. I was out of shape, and I was just like, I'm a mess, right? And I was like, the girls are not gonna like a mess. So I said, I got to get in shape, right? So my brother, he had a training camp at his high school where he played football. So I was able to go to his high school during the summer and go into the weight room and to go train on the track and to train with the team all summer. And I remember that summer, I got into the best shape of my life. And I was just like, wow, this is great. And I just kept on with that. I said, I'm just going to keep on with this train because the moment I stop, I know it's going to be hard for me to get back on it. And I know there's so many people who have that mindset, who have had that mindset, or maybe a similar experience where they have started something, where they started a health routine. They started seeing you, as their doctor, but then they stopped along the way. What would be something that you say to help them be committed and to stay committed on that journey?
Don't feel guilty. You put yourself in it's almost like you're putting yourself in a point of like, I wouldn't say failure, but when you put a goal like I'm gonna lose 50 pounds in 1 week or something like that, and you try your hardest and it doesn't happen, typically that's a mental disturbance of like, I didn't accomplish my goal. Depression sets in, and they just don't feel like returning back to the activity. I always tell people when they want to go into this world of wellness in a longevity sense, right? You want to go into some type of like healthy lifestyle. Start slow, start small. You're not looking at a weekend journey. You're looking at a 2-3 year journey. Just take your time, slowly progress. If you're using a mobile app, get accustomed to it. Open the range up for the total calories and the macros and all that. Open them up just so you can make sure that you're accomplishing that range. But more importantly, get used to using that app. If it's just simple walking, just put a small type amount of steps per day. Go for 2,500 steps a day. And then when you feel confident, add another couple, 50, 100 on there. Just take small steps because you're not really changing. You're not thinking about exercising. You're changing behavior. And that's the hardest part. When you start fighting your own behavior, it's all of a sudden, it's a mental anguish. Like, I can put that off. But when you slowly become that person through behavior changes and conditioning and saying, every morning I'm going to get up, pretty soon you don't have to think about saying that to yourself. You just get up. And then next thing you know it, you are in your habit. You're in your condition. Now it's a behavior that you're set. Now here you go with the exercise, and then you're going to increase it because you set a baseline that you can handle. Now it's time to tax it. Now it's time to push yourself. Let's go for 5,000 steps. Let's go for 7,000 steps. Let's add a little bit of like weights in our workouts. Let's go into diet. And then you can kind of go into it. But to go into the health world like 100% hard, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's tough. It is very tough even for me. That's really, I consider myself a healthy person. It's tough for me to go from 0 to 100 one day. I take bits and pieces. I see myself 6 months, 1 year. It goes, all right, if I'm going to work on my cardiovascular, right? So I want to work on my health and I want to let's say I want to go for a 6 minute mile pace. Well, I'm not going to do that my first get. I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to start off at 11-minute mile pace, then break it down to 10 minutes. And just like that, just slowly develop that where it doesn't feel like it's taxing you, but you know you're going to hit that goal at a certain time. And then you're not mentally stressed out. Your body's adapting easy. The recovery is better because you're not rushing. And then your goal is achieved. Once you hit that goal, it's not a physical, but it's a mental gain. That's what you want to think. When you're mentally involved with it, at the positive side of it, the body follows. And that's what's really important. And then again, you have to remind yourself it is a process that takes time. Don't rush it. Just take your time.
Yes, definitely. The process is maybe one of the most important things. I know for me, it was was it this year? No, it was last year. It was last year. I had slept wrong. It's just like, man, you get in your 30s, you sleep wrong. You got pain for a month or two. So I had slept wrong and something happened in my neck. And I was just like, okay, if I go to a regular doctor, they're just going to give me some medicine, like a painkiller. And I have learned my lesson not to go for the pain management aspect. I want to recover. So I looked around, I found a chiropractor in my area, and I said, this is the guy for me, right? I did my due diligence. I made sure I looked around. It just wasn't my close. I had to drive 30 minutes to this guy. I have one 2 minutes away from me, right?
Good.
I could have went to the 2 minutes one instead of driving 30 minutes. I said, no, this is the guy, right? I put faith in him, number one, right? I had faith that he knew what he was doing. He, like his track record, everything. And just the way he proceeded to help me recover was phenomenal, right? Like that right there was probably the key, right? And I remember, like, after I started to feel somewhat decent, right, a couple months down the road, I was like, hey, I'm recovered, right? So I went to the gym. I started doing some things I shouldn't have been doing because I used to do them, and boom, worst pain that I have felt since that injury. I was like, man, what happened? And I remember going to the doctor and I told him what happened. He goes, well, you went too fast. Your body's still recovering. And I was just like, kudos for you, for telling me that now. But it was a learning lesson for me, right? I was such in a rush to get back to normal, or to get back to where I was, where I didn't focus on the recovery. So that small aspect of like slow and small is so important. If you have a doctor that can be supportive along the way, that can give you confidence. I can't tell you how many doctors I've had who were just confident, like they just had confidence in my recovery, and I put my faith in them and everything worked out. And it's just like, wow, like, that's the power, right? Where I understand there's some doctors where it's like they will give you medicine and they'll give you all these prescriptions. Yeah, I'm not talking about that. And I don't have those people on the podcast. I'm more interested in people who have the mindset of recovery, that you can get better, that if you're in a rough spot right now, that they work with you to get better, right? This is what I believe the future of medicine is, where it's not only about a prescription, it's about a plan. And Dr. Rhee has a plan. He has an idea for what you can be or what you can become. Maybe it can, get damn near close to what you were in your life, right? Because a lot of people like to think that they're still 20 and they're 50, right? And I know there's some funny videos going on where someone will be like on a step or something, and they're 40 or something. They jump off the step, think they're 20, and they'll be on the floor, and there's like a ghost of them because they passed away. And then they're like, damn, like, I got overconfident. But this is not to say that you just have to tiptoe throughout your life. We can increase that baseline, as you were saying, day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year. And it's going to take time. But if you can dedicate yourself to that, if you have the right support systems, you're going to find yourself in maybe the best shape of your life. I remember talking to an individual at the gym. He was 54 at the time. And this was years ago now. He says, I'm in the best shape of my life. And I'm thinking, how are you the best shape of your life if you're 54 when you already went through your 20s? This is this idea of you can be in the best shape of your life. You just have to have the plan. All right. And, we had a great conversation, Dr. Rhee. And what I would love from you is to get some final words, some final thoughts. And then if you could, can you please tell people how they can find you, reach out, purchase your book, and learn more about what you're doing?
I think the biggest thing that if I like to tell people, if you have a question about stem cell therapy or regenerative medicine and what's the mechanism and it doesn't seem clearly understood, get my book. It's over there on Amazon, The Future of Regenerative Medicine. And then it would walk you through in a simple format what kind of stem cells are there, what's the present therapy with it, and then understand where the future is moving towards to. And the future is topical. It's a topical application that you're going to slowly understand that this is something that you don't need the injections. You don't need to see a doctor that has a surgical center or some type of clean lab. You can do it right at your home. So that's the biggest thing that I want to talk about is that side of it through my book. Now, you can also learn more about stem cell, my product Regen, the topical stem cell, through my website, rhegen.com, regen.com, and you can learn about that. But other than that, if you have any questions, shoot me an email on that website, and then I'll get some answers for you.
All right, perfect. I'm going to make it easy for everyone. All the links are right down below. I know we didn't talk too much about the topical aspect or the stem cell aspect. We brought it up, we hinted at it, but that's going to be an inquisitive thing for, I think, people, if they're interested into that, to reach out to you directly, because I'm not an expert in that and I couldn't even fake it. So I think you are the man to speak with if they have any questions about that. All the links are right down below. Dr. Rhee, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about your work.
Thank you very much.